Hi, this is Elisabeth Hancock, host of the Great Awakening podcast. So, as I promised, this week we're going to be looking at the moon. The moon is fascinating, not least because it really is looking like it is an artificial structure. However, if you've looked at the moon enough times, as indeed I have, you may also feel that it seems to be alive and has a nice sort of white energy, a light energy around it, which also makes us think that there is some sort of a living being, a living thing located there. There are many researchers who believe that the moon is an artificial structure, mainly because it doesn't have a naturally occurring orbit, and we've only ever been able to see one side of it. But incredibly, there are also records that tell us that the moon hasn't always been there, such as the original Aramaic texts of the Old Testament, which talk of a time before the moon hung in the sky. And the later edited English version has been rewritten to include the moon, which certainly is very interesting. Why would they do that? Some ancient drawings and cave art also show pictures with the moon, and then earlier ones are actually moon-free. And there is even an ancient pre-lunar civilization whose texts do not refer to the moon at all. It has even been suggested that the moon is an old spacecraft that was used to bring other star beings here when their own planets became too unstable, and is possibly also a living being with an organic consciousness of its own that was repurposed to become the moon in order to help stabilize the Earth after a period of cataclysms and when the global flood was, which, as we know, was around 9,600 BC. There is even a theory that it was the moon or the spacecraft coming into our atmosphere that caused the Great Flood of the Younger Dryas period, which is certainly possible when you consider that the moon is still part of our atmosphere and is located in the exosphere at the outer edge of our atmosphere. In the 1960s, Ingo Swann was a remote viewer working on the CIA Stargate project, and he was asked to remote view an unknown location, which later turned out to be the moon. As he was remote viewing it, he was describing structures, indicated that the structure was hollow and artificial, and was also very surprised to find that there were beings working there. When he reported these details to his project head, Axel Rod, he immediately pulled him out of the session and warned that extraterrestrials are telepathic and know when they are being remote viewed. He said that he was worried there might be repercussions later on. The late William Tompkins, who was an engineer at aerospace for 45 years, was also told that the moon is artificial, and it's actually a control center for this side of the galaxy. So if the moon is artificial, what is it doing in our solar system? What's it doing in our atmosphere? Why is it there? And why does the full moon send so many people crazy? As in the word lunatic tells us. If we didn't have the moon, we wouldn't have half the fauna and flora that we have on our planet. It really has created an amazing ecosystem, which can only be seen as a beneficial thing. So many researchers believe that the moon was placed in orbit around our planet approximately 12,000 years ago, which is the same period as the Younger Dryas, the same period as the Great Flood, the same period when we had all these cataclysmic events, and even the same period where maybe we had a pole axis shift, where south goes north and north goes south. So the theory is that the moon is controlling Earth by projecting energy waves that creates this AI matrix that we're trapped inside. Through frequency bombardment, it controls our technology, our minds, even our world leaders, religions, and even reincarnation and the karmic cycles, ensuring that we keep incarnating back into this matrix. So this matrix is designed so that we can't leave. And apparently sources at the Pentagon also admit that since the 1970s, all manned space exploration from Earth has been stopped, possibly even before the Apollo missions to the moon, because in the highly detailed 3-hour documentary American Moon, directed by Italian filmmaker Massimo Mazzucchi, he makes it very clear that all 6 Apollo missions to the moon were staged. And of course, before Stanley Kubrick died, he also admitted that he had filmed the moon landing in 1969 and they hadn't gone to the moon at all, which really asks the question, why would they make this up? Why would they tell us that they've been to the moon when they haven't? What exactly was the agenda behind this? And how have they managed to pass it off as being real 50 years later? It's quite incredible and really leads to so many questions that it just makes me question everything that we see around us, especially now in these crazy times that we have. Why would the government make up a massive story about us going to the moon and stage it to look like we went to the moon and broadcast it on TV and tell everyone that this is happening, that people were watching this on television, people were watching men go to the moon? Why would they do this? Was this in order to be able to secure more money, more taxpayers' funds, which of course paid for all of this? Is it maybe because they want to then 50 years later lead to the alien invasion? And of course, they have to include space at some point in there, showing that space is real and it is actually somewhere that we can go. When we think about the indigenous texts, the old texts, and we look at the Anunnaki who came here in the Sumerian tablets, they came from the sky down. And we look at other texts as well. Mayan stories talk about there being an upper earth, a lower earth, and a middle earth. We are the middle earth. So what does that make upper earth? And why is it that Anu means spirit and Ki means earth? So Anunnaki, spirit, earth. What exactly is this telling us about space and who we are and why we're here? And why has the spiritual aspect of the human being being completely deleted and either put into religion or into something else entirely? And as my daughter said to me this morning, what does spirituality even mean? Well, I think it means that we are a spirit, but we're also a physical being, physical flesh. And when these two are united, the spirit and the flesh, then that is the true human form. And I think with that comes our multidimensionality and our connection to multiple dimensions, which is who we really are. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this week. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch up with you next week when Guy Anderson and I talk again about Tartaria. Okay, take care. I'll catch up with you soon. Bye.